Carlotta's lips bloomed with deep color like a sweet red rose in spring. Her long, dark hair was thick and glossy, held in a plump braid that hugged the nape of her neck. Often she wore a bright blue felt Mexican jacket, appliqued with palm trees, men napping beneath sombreros, donkeys being led to market, and prickly cacti. When she spoke, her rich voice delivered promises and yeses, sweet as a candy dish full of caramels. You have to know how much I love caramels to understand that one. I was mesmerized by my second grade teacher. She seemed like a beautiful heroine in a fairy tale, someone who could pull out a wand and crunch, crackle, make thorny branches part and snap to reveal a glowing secret passage that would help me escape impending boredom. Such was her power on my imagination. I wanted to follow her everywhere. And then there's a transition here in the work itself that I'll just sort of tell you about. This is the 50s. The story takes place in West Seattle. I went to Alki grade school. And at the time, I'm a boomer, and they ran out of room for all of us. So many schools, like Alki grade school, had portables all over outside. And this class was held in a portable, and it was a split classroom, second and third grade. A little like a blab school. And Mrs. Parlato, in her wisdom, decided a few months into the year that she was going to skip me to the third grade and talk my parents into it, and so that happened, and the story progresses from there. Now, only months into the school year, I would be one of them. Mrs. Parlato had chosen me. I could check out more advanced books from the school library. Wizard of Oz, By the Shores of Silver Lake, Chip the Dam Builder. I still remember Chip the Dam Builder. My heart soared. This pushed me one step closer to being in a league with my teacher. Or so I felt. She began to explain to me that I would have a little catching up to do and that she would work with me on that. A vision of the two of us seated at a long library table strewn with books, papers, and pencils bubbled up in my head. We two, head to head, shoulder to shoulder. She would coach me. With her help, her little Olympian student would transform overnight into a third grade wonder. Over the next few days in school, my classmates buzzed over my move. Somehow I was different to them. It felt as if I were wearing a Halloween mask and no one could guess who I was, except Mrs. Parlato. What happened next changed everything. It started with my mother and the Avon lady. Mother ordered a modest trio of facial cream, foundation, and lipstick. As a reward, she could pick 2 or 3 small sample lipsticks and try them out to see if, say, Startling Orange or Rumor of Red would become her next fashion color. I loved these little tubes. They piled up in a small silver tray on Mother's vanity. She never used them. They just sat there, waiting, pure potential. I fiddled with the small plastic tubes in the tray after the Avon lady left, opening one to see what the color looked like. The first was pink, very pink, like the stiff net tutu on my Harriet Hubbard doll. Next, I opened another tube with a lipstick that was exactly like the deep red of Mrs. Parlato's lips. Quickly, I replaced the top, peeked in the vanity mirror to see if my mother was in sight, then stuffed the tiny tube into the pocket of my jumper. It was perfect. It was our red. Lipstick tube under my pillow, I lay awake in my bed that night, picturing my secret surprise for Mrs. Parlato. She would be astonished and pleased. She would nod at me with her dark eyes shining, just a single confirming nod. The next morning, I chose my clothes carefully. Yes to the blue corduroy skirt with a matching blue and gold plaid bolero. On the left side of the bolero, I pinned a small white plastic Pegasus that soared to the heavens. I lifted the small tube of lipstick from its hiding place under my pillow and stashed it into my skirt pocket. When I arrived at the door of the portable, I took a deep breath and stepped toward my fate. When the bell rang for morning recess, I slid out of my chair, stood up, and felt for the small tube in the lining of my pocket. Instead of rushing out with everyone else, I walked slowly to the door, ready to move ahead. I didn't play 7-Up, my favorite game, during recess, and I didn't talk with any of my friends, very unlike me. Instead, I rushed into the girls' restroom in the main brick school building. It was empty. I looked straight at myself in the mirror and saw a tiny grown-up staring back at me. I pursed my lips. Slowly, I applied lipstick as meticulously as I would paint within lines. When I finished, my lips glowed red, bright as Mrs. bright as Mrs. Parlato's. I pictured the wide red smile on her face as she acknowledged my matching lips. But the scene after the bell was nothing I imagined.